The morning sky of Loomis Prime glowed with soft purple light as three suns rose above the crystal forests. Ambassador Nera stood at the great window of the council chamber, her four delicate arms folded together in worry. Her flower-like face showed deep concern as she watched the peaceful city below. "The reports keep getting worse," said Councillor Tam, his voice barely a whisper. He was ancient even for their long-lived species, and his petals had turned silver with age. 3 more colonies have fallen to the Vorthans this week." Nera turned from the window. Her large, gentle eyes reflected the fear that all Kari felt these days. "How many total?" she asked. 17 worlds in 2 months, Tam replied, his hands shaking as he checked his data pad. "They take everything. Resources, technology, sometimes they take people as slaves." The Kari had never known war. Their species had evolved on Loomis Prime over millions of years without conflict. They were plant-like beings who drew energy from their suns and nutrients from their crystal-rich soil. Violence was not just unfamiliar to them. It was impossible. Their minds simply could not understand the idea of deliberately hurting another intelligent being. "What do our allies say?" Nera asked, though she already knew the answer. Tam's petals drooped. The Theon Republic sent 2 old fighter ships. The Silicon Collective offered some defense drones. The others? He paused. The others are too afraid of Vorthan revenge. Nera walked to the center of the chamber where a holographic display showed their galaxy. Red markers indicated Vorthan-controlled systems spreading like infection across the outer regions. The pattern was clear. They were moving toward the core worlds, toward Loomis Prime itself. "How long do we have?" she asked quietly. "Their main fleet was spotted at the Xerion system yesterday," Tam said. "At their current speed, they will reach us in 7 days." 7 days. Nera felt her limbs grow weak. The Vorthans were a nightmare species, tall armored beings who lived for conquest. They had evolved on a harsh world of constant warfare, and they brought that violence with them everywhere they went. Their ships were massive, their weapons terrible, and they showed no mercy to those who opposed them. "We must send a distress call," Nera said finally. The council chamber fell silent. A distress call was the last option. A plea sent across the galaxy begging for help from any species willing to fight. It was an admission that they could not defend themselves. "To whom?" asked Councillor Vera, her young voice filled with desperation. "Who in the galaxy has ships strong enough to face the Vorthans? Who would risk their own worlds for us?" Nera had no answer. She moved to the communication console at the center of the room. The device was made of living crystal that responded to her thoughts. With trembling hands, she activated the galactic transmission array. "This is Ambassador Nera of the Kari Council, speaking for all inhabitants of Loomis Prime," she began, her voice carrying across space to every civilized world in the galaxy. "We send this plea to any species capable of military assistance. The Vorthan Empire approaches our world with intent to conquer and destroy. We are a peaceful people with no weapons, no soldiers, no way to defend ourselves." She paused, gathering strength for the next words. Around her, the council members watched in silence. Outside, the crystal city of their ancestors gleamed in the triple sunlight, beautiful and defenseless. "We have 7 days before their fleet arrives. If there is anyone in the galaxy who stands against the destruction of innocent worlds, please hear our call. We offer whatever we have in return for protection. Please, we do not want to die." The transmission ended. The chamber remained quiet except for the soft humming of the crystal walls. Nera slumped into her chair, exhausted by the effort of asking strangers to die for their world. The responses began within hours. Most were rejections, polite but firm refusals from species who feared Vorthan retaliation. A few offered small assistance, outdated ships, defensive systems, token forces that would make little difference against the approaching armada. By the 4th day, hope was fading. The Theon fighters had arrived, 2 ancient vessels that would be destroyed in minutes against Vorthan dreadnoughts. The Silicon drones were better, but there were only 50 of them against a fleet of 300 Vorthan warships. Their efforts would be meaningless. "Perhaps we should consider surrender," suggested Councillor Kell during the evening session. His words brought gasps from the younger council members, but several elders nodded sadly. "What would surrender mean?" asked Vera. Tam consulted his files. "Based on previous conquests, they would strip mine our crystal forests for rare minerals. Our people would be relocated to work camps or sold as slaves to other systems. Our culture, our cities, our entire way of life would be erased within a year. The room fell silent again. Death seemed preferable to such a fate, but the Kari could not even choose to fight and die with honor. They were simply not capable of violence. On the 5th day, as the first scout ships appeared at the edge of their system, an unexpected transmission arrived. It came from a sector of space that galactic charts marked as uninhabitable, places where the planets were so hostile that intelligent life was considered impossible. The message was short and transmitted on old-style radio frequencies that most advanced species had abandoned centuries ago. The voice was strange, not the musical tones of the Kari or the harmonic resonances of other civilized species, but something rough and raw. "This is Admiral Kane of the Terran Defense Force," the voice said. "We received your distress call. Earth is sending a fleet. Hold your position and maintain hope. Help is coming." Nera stared at the communication console in confusion. "Terran? Earth?" she asked. "What species is this?" Tam was already searching the galactic databases. After several minutes, he looked up with a puzzled expression. "I can find no record of any species called Terran or any world called Earth. The transmission came from the Orion sector. That entire region is classified as uninhabitable. Deathworlds." "Deathworlds?" Vera asked. "Planets with extreme gravity, toxic atmospheres, temperature variations that would kill most life forms, dangerous weather patterns, hostile flora and fauna," Tam explained. "The Galactic Survey classified them as Class 12 hazard zones. Nothing intelligent could evolve in such places." Counselor Kell shook his head. "It must be an automated response from some ancient probe. Perhaps a long-dead civilization left it there centuries ago." But Nera felt something different as she listened to the transmission again. There had been something in that rough voice. Determination, confidence, perhaps even anger at their situation. It did not sound like a machine. "What if it is real?" she asked quietly. "What if there really is a species out there that survived on Deathworlds?" The council exchanged uncertain glances. The idea seemed impossible, but their situation was desperate enough to grasp at any hope. "If such beings existed," Tam said slowly, "and if they somehow developed space travel despite living in such hostile conditions, what would they be like?" No one answered. The question was too frightening to consider. On the 6th day, long-range sensors detected the main Vorthan fleet entering their system. 300 massive warships, each one capable of destroying their entire world. Commander Vex, the Vorthan leader, sent his own transmission, a demand for immediate surrender or total annihilation. Nera stood again at the great window, watching her people go about their daily lives below. Children played in the crystal gardens, their laughter carried on the warm breeze. Artists created beautiful sculptures that would stand for thousands of years. Scholars debated philosophy and mathematics in the great libraries. All of it would be gone within 24 hours, unless the mysterious Terrans were real. Unless help was really coming from the Deathworlds of the galaxy. As the three suns set on what might be their final day of freedom, Nera made a choice that would change everything. She activated the planetary defense shields, not because they would stop the Vorthans, but because they would buy time. Time for miracles. Time for the unknown beings from the Deathworlds to prove they were more than just legends. Time for humanity to show the galaxy what survivors looked like. The alarm crystals throughout Loomis Prime began singing at dawn on the 7th day. Their high musical notes carried a message that made every Kari stop what they were doing and look up at the sky with wonder and fear. "Unknown ships detected at system edge," announced the automated voice from the Planetary Defense Center. "Configuration unknown. Species unknown. Intent unknown." Ambassador Nera rushed from her sleep chamber to the council building. Her forearms moved quickly as she tried to dress herself while running. Around her, other Kari were emerging from their crystal homes, their flower-like faces turned upward toward the stars they could not see in the daylight. The council chamber was already full of activity when she arrived. Counselor Tam stood at the main display, his old hands shaking as he adjusted the controls. The holographic image showed their solar system with new dots of light at the very edge, ships that had not been there an hour ago. "How many?" Nera asked, trying to catch her breath. 12 vessels, Tam replied. They appeared suddenly, as if they came out of faster-than-light travel. But the energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. Counselor Vera was monitoring the communication channels. "They are not responding to standard galactic greeting protocols. Wait." She pressed her hand to her ear. I am getting something on the old radio frequencies. The rough voice from the day before filled the chamber again, but this time it was live. Kari Council, this is Captain Reed of the Terran defense ship Valkyrie. We are here in response to your distress call. Request permission to establish communication link. The council members looked at each other in amazement. The mysterious Terrans were real, and they had actually come to help. This is Ambassador Nera, she replied, her voice trembling with hope and fear. We grant permission for communication. Thank you for answering our call. Understood. Switching to visual communication in 30 seconds. Fair warning, we may look different from what you are used to. The main display flickered and changed. Suddenly, the council chamber was looking at the bridge of an alien starship. The room was dark, lit by red lights that would have hurt Kari's eyes if they had been brighter. Metal surfaces reflected the glow, and everything looked hard and angular, so different from the soft, curved crystal architecture of their world. Then the being stepped into view and several council members gasped. Captain Reed was clearly a predator. He stood on two legs like the Kari, but that was where the similarity ended. His skin was pale and covered in what looked like artificial materials. Clothing, Nera realized. His eyes faced forward like a hunter's, not to the sides like prey animals. When he spoke, she could see white teeth that were obviously designed for tearing meat. But strangest of all was his expression. Despite his fearsome appearance, his eyes showed concern and determination. When he looked at them, Nera did not feel like prey being studied by a predator. She felt like someone who was being evaluated for protection. Ambassador Nera, Captain Reed said, his voice surprisingly gentle. I want you to know that we understand your situation. We have analyzed the Vorthan fleet movements and we are here to help. But I need to ask some questions about your defensive capabilities. Defensive capabilities? Nera repeated, confused by the term. Your military forces, ships, weapons, trained soldiers? What do you have available to work with? The council chamber fell silent. Finally, Nera had to give the embarrassing truth. Captain Reed, we have no military forces. We have no weapons. We are a peaceful species. We do not fight. The human's eyebrows moved upward, an expression that Kari did not understand. No military at all. How do you handle conflicts with other species? We negotiate, we trade, we find peaceful solutions, Counselor Tam explained. We cannot harm other intelligent beings. Our minds are not constructed for violence. Captain Reed was quiet for a long moment. Behind him, other humans moved around the bridge, and Nera could see that they all had the same predator features. Forward-facing eyes, exposed teeth, lean bodies that looked built for movement and action. I need to understand this clearly, the captain said finally. You have never had wars, never developed weapons, never trained soldiers? Never, Nera confirmed. We cannot even comprehend why intelligent beings would want to hurt each other. When we first heard about the Vorthans, we thought there must be some mistake. How can a species survive if it destroys other species? Another human stepped up beside Captain Reed. This one was smaller with longer hair and softer features, but still clearly a predator. Captain, I am reading their biology now. They are plant-based life forms. They get energy from their suns and minerals from their soil. They literally have no need to compete for resources, she said. Thank you, Dr. Mills, Reed said. Then he looked back at the Kari. Ambassador, I need to explain something about humans. We come from what you would call a death world. On our planet, everything tries to kill everything else. We evolved as hunters and we learned to fight because if we did not fight, we died. The concept was so alien that Nera felt dizzy trying to understand it. Your own planet tries to kill you? Storms that can level cities, Reed explained. Temperature changes that go from freezing to burning. Predators with claws and teeth, diseases, poisonous. Plants, earthquakes, floods. Our world taught us to be survivors. How terrible, whispered Counselor Vera. How? Do you maintain peace among your own people? Captain Reed smiled, and for the first time the expression did not look frightening to Nera. We learned that the only way to survive on a death world is to work together. We protect each other, and when we see other species being threatened by bullies like the Vorthans, we protect them too. You would risk your lives for beings you have never met? Tam asked in amazement. Where we come from, if you do not stand up for those who cannot defend themselves, you are not worthy of calling yourself human, Reed replied. The communication was interrupted by an urgent beeping sound. Another human, this one wearing different clothing, approached. Captain Reed quickly. We have movement from the Vorthan fleet. They are changing course toward our position. Reed nodded. Time to intercept? 4 hours at current speed, the officer replied. The captain looked back at the Kari. Ambassador, we need to move our ships into defensive positions. I am going to have Lieutenant Torres take some small craft and scout the enemy fleet. But I want you to understand something. We are not here to conquer or control your world. We are here to help you stay free. Why? Nera asked. What do you gain from helping us? Captain Reed was quiet for a moment, then answered in a way that would become famous throughout the galaxy in the years to come. Because it is the right thing to do and because someone has to. The communication link shifted to show Lieutenant Torres, a younger human with quick eyes and confident movements. Ambassador, I am taking a reconnaissance team to study the Vorthan ships. We need to know their weapons, their tactics, their weaknesses. Can you provide us with any information about their previous attacks? Counselor Tam quickly transmitted data files. These are reports from the colonies they destroyed, but I must warn you, the Vorthan ships are enormous. Each one is larger than our biggest space stations. Size is not everything, Torres replied with a grin that showed those predator teeth. We have learned a few things about fighting bigger opponents. As the humans prepared for battle, Nera found herself studying them with fascination. They moved with purpose and coordination, like a group mind made of individual parts. They did not seem afraid of the approaching Vorthan fleet despite being outnumbered 25-1. Captain Reed, she called out. Are you certain you can protect us? The Vorthans have never been defeated. The human captain turned back to face her, and his eyes held something that the Kari had never seen before, the quiet confidence of a species that had survived everything the universe could throw at them. Ambassador, the Vorthans have never faced humans before. They are about to learn why we are the only species that calls Deathworlds home. The communication link ended, leaving the Kari Council in stunned silence. Lieutenant Torres pressed herself against the cold metal wall of the asteroid as the massive Vorthan dreadnought passed overhead. The ship was so large that it blocked out the stars, its dark hull covered in weapons that could destroy entire cities. Through her helmet's visor, she could see the glowing symbols that marked it as Commander Vex's flagship. Eagle 1 to Nest, she whispered into her radio. I am getting a close look at their command ship. It is bigger than our intelligence report suggested. Captain Reed's voice crackled back through the communication system. How big are we talking, Torres? About 3 kilometers long, maybe half that wide. I count at least 200 weapon ports on just the side I can see. She adjusted her position to get a better view. But Captain, they are flying in a straight line formation. No scouts, no flanking ships. They are moving like they expect no resistance at all. Copy that. Any sign of defensive maneuvers? Torres watched as the rest of the Vorthan fleet followed their flagship in a perfect column. Each ship was identical in design. Massive, angular, bristling with weapons, but lacking any form of protective escort pattern. Negative, Captain. They are flying like they are in a parade, not going to battle. Understood. Return to base. We have work to do. Back on the bridge of the Valkyrie, Captain Reed studied the tactical display with his senior officers. The Vorthan fleet was indeed impressive. 300 ships, each one capable of destroying a small moon. But their formation showed something important about their tactics. They have never faced real resistance, said Commander Black, the ship's tactical officer. Look at this formation. It is designed to intimidate, not to fight. Dr. Mills, who had been studying the reconnaissance data, looked up from her console. I have been analyzing their previous battles. Every species they have conquered has either surrendered immediately or offered only token resistance. They have never fought anyone who actually knows how to wage war. What about their individual ship capabilities? Reed asked. Powerful energy weapons, heavy armor, good shields, Black replied. But they are big and slow. They are built to overwhelm weak opponents, not to engage in tactical combat. Reed nodded slowly. They are bullies. They are used to picking on species that cannot fight back. He turned to his communication officer. Open a channel to all ships. Battle Formation Alpha 7, we are going to give them something they have never seen before. The 12 human ships spread out among the asteroid field, between the Vorthans and Loomis Prime. To anyone watching from a distance, it would seem like a hopeless situation. A dozen small vessels against 300 massive warships. But the humans had learned something important during their evolution on Earth. Sometimes the smaller predator wins by being smarter, faster, and more vicious than the larger one. Commander Vex sat on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with amusement. The mysterious ships that had appeared in the system were laughably small compared to his mighty fleet. Each of his dreadnoughts was 50 times larger than the biggest enemy vessel. "Commander, the unknown ships are taking positions in the asteroid field, hiding behind rocks like frightened children," his weapons officer reported. Vex laughed. "Open a communication channel. Let us see what these fools have to say before we destroy them." The view screen activated, showing the bridge of the lead human ship. Vex studied the alien being that appeared, bipedal like many species, but with an unsettling appearance. The creature's eyes faced forward like a predator's, and there was something in its expression that Vex found disturbing. "I am Commander Vex of the Vorthan Empire," he announced in his most intimidating voice. "You are interfering with our rightful conquest of this system. You have 30 seconds to withdraw or be destroyed." The human captain looked directly at him without any sign of fear. "This is Captain Reed of the Terran Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to withdraw your fleet, or we will demonstrate why humans do not make good prey." Vex blinked in surprise. No one had ever spoken to him with such casual confidence. "Did you say humans? I have never heard of this species. Are you aware that you are outnumbered 25-1? "I am aware," Reed replied calmly. "Are you aware that you have never fought a species that evolved on a death world?" "Death world?" Vex's voice carried a note of uncertainty. "What is a death world?" Reed smiled, showing his white teeth. "A planet where everything tries to kill you every single day. Where you learn to be a hunter or you die. Where you discover that the most dangerous creature on the planet is the one that does not look dangerous at all." The communication ended abruptly. Vex stared at the blank screen, feeling an emotion he had not experienced in years. Doubt. But his pride quickly overcame his uncertainty. No matter what these humans claimed, they were still vastly outnumbered. "All ships, attack formation," he ordered. "Show these Deathworld creatures what real power looks like." The Vorthan fleet moved forward in their traditional overwhelming assault pattern. Energy weapons charged, shields at maximum power. Every ship focused on the small cluster of human vessels hiding in the asteroid field. It was a formation that had conquered 17 worlds without a single defeat. But as they approached the asteroid, something unexpected happened. The human ships disappeared. "Where did they go?" Vex demanded. His sensor officer frantically worked at his console. "They were there a moment ago, Commander. Our sensors show nothing but empty space. Ships do not just vanish, find them." The answer came in the form of weapons fire from directly above the Vorthan formation. Kinetic rounds, simple chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds, slammed into the rear ships of the fleet. The Vorthan shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, were useless against what amounted to hypervelocity bullets. "Above us," the weapons officer shouted. "They are using the asteroid's gravity wells to mask their approach." Vex watched in shock as 3 of his ships erupted in explosions. The humans had somehow used the asteroid field itself as cover, moving through spaces that should have been impossible to navigate. "Return fire," he ordered. The Vorthan ships turned their massive energy weapons toward the attacking humans, but the small ships were already moving. They darted between asteroids, using the rocky debris as shields while launching coordinated attacks on the larger vessels. "They are not fighting like any species we have encountered," reported the tactical officer. "They are using hit-and-run tactics, attacking from multiple directions simultaneously." This was not how space battles were supposed to work. In Vex's experience, fleets faced each other in open space and traded fire until the weaker side was destroyed. But the humans were fighting like hunters stalking prey. On the bridge of the Valkyrie, Captain Reed watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. "Target their command ship's sensor array," he ordered. "Blind them first, then we will show them what pack hunters can do." The human ships coordinated their attacks with precision that seemed almost telepathic. They moved in patterns that confused the Vorthan targeting systems, struck at weak points the enemy did not know they had, and used the environment itself as a weapon. Sergeant Blake, leading a boarding party on the assault ship Phoenix, broke through the hull of a Vorthan cruiser using nothing more than shaped charges and determination. The Vorthans inside, used to operating in the safety of their ship's interior, were unprepared for close combat against beings who had evolved from persistence hunters. "They are inside our ships," came the panicked reports from multiple Vorthan vessels. "How are they getting through our hull?" The answer was simple. Humans were smaller, more flexible, and far more determined than the Vorthans had ever imagined. They found ways into the massive ships through maintenance ports, damaged sections, and spaces that the larger aliens could not even fit through. Commander Vex watched his perfect formation dissolve into chaos. Ships were being destroyed by weapons that should not have been able to penetrate their shields. His crews were reporting boarding parties that seemed to appear from nowhere. And worst of all, the humans were doing it with only 12 ships. "Retreat," he finally ordered. "All ships, retreat to safe distance." But the humans did not let them run. They pursued the fleeing Vorthans like wolves chasing wounded prey, picking off the slower ships and forcing the survivors to scatter in panic. On Loomis Prime, Ambassador Nera and the Council watched the battle through their long-range sensors. They could barely believe what they were seeing. The mighty Vorthan fleet, which had conquered 17 worlds, was being destroyed by a handful of ships from a species they had never heard of. "How are they doing this?" Counselor Vera asked in amazement. "They fight like their world taught them to," Nera replied, remembering Captain Reed's words. "They are survivors, and now they are teaching the galaxy what that means." In space, the battle was already over. The Vorthan fleet, or what remained of it, fled toward the edge of the system. They had learned a lesson that would spread throughout the galaxy in the coming days. Deathworld predators were not to be underestimated, and humans had just announced their presence to the universe. The crystal forests of Loomis Prime had never known the sound of warfare. For millions of years, the only noises in the peaceful groves were the gentle chiming of wind through crystal branches and the soft songs of the Kari as they tended their gardens. But now the harsh crack of weapons fire echoed between the translucent trees. Major Cross crouched behind a cluster of blue crystals, watching through his scope as Vorthan soldiers moved through the forest below. The enemy troops were massive. Each one stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in thick armor that made them look like walking tanks. They moved slowly but deliberately, their heavy weapons sweeping back and forth as they searched for targets. "Phoenix leader to all units," Cross spoke quietly into his radio. "I count 40 Vorthans moving toward the civilian shelters. They are using the main crystal path just like we expected." The voice of Private Williams crackled back from somewhere in the forest. "Roger that, Major. Wolfpack 2 is in position on their left flank. These big guys really do not know how to move quietly, do they?" Cross allowed himself a small smile. The Vorthans might be larger and more heavily armed, but they were making every mistake that predators learned to avoid on Earth. They traveled in straight lines, made noise, and bunched together in groups that made perfect targets. "Remember the mission," Cross reminded his troops. "Protect the civilians. The Kari are completely defenseless, so we are all that stands between them and slavery." 3 hours earlier, after the space battle had scattered most of the Vorthan fleet, Commander Vex had played his final card. Instead of retreating completely, he had launched ground forces toward Loomis Prime's surface. If he could not take the system by force, he would capture the population and sell them as slaves to recover his losses. The Kari had been horrified by the very concept. Ambassador Nera had actually fainted when Major Cross explained what the Vorthans intended to do with captured civilians. The idea that intelligent beings would deliberately cause suffering to others was beyond their ability to comprehend, she had said. "We cannot fight them. We cannot even think about hurting another being. It is impossible for us." "Then do not think about it," Cross had replied. "Leave the fighting to us. Just tell us where your people are hiding and we will make sure the Vorthans never reach them." Now, as the human soldiers prepared their ambush, the cultural differences between the species became even more apparent. The Kari hiding in their crystal shelters could only watch and hope, while the humans moved through the forest like ghosts, setting up a trap that would have made their wolf ancestors proud. "Target the leader first," Cross ordered. "Take out their command structure and the rest will panic." Below them, General Krex led the Vorthan ground assault with confidence. His intelligence reports had described the Kari as weak, plant-like beings with no military capability. The few small ships that had damaged the fleet in space must have been mercenaries, probably gone now that the real fighting was about to begin. "Sir, we are detecting Kari life signs in the crystal formations ahead," his lieutenant reported. "Approximately 200 civilians." "Excellent," Krex growled. "Capture them all. The slave markets will pay well for exotic specimens." He raised his voice to address his troops. Remember, we want them alive but compliant. A few casualties will make the others more cooperative. The words reached the human soldiers through their translation devices, and Cross felt something cold and dangerous settle in his chest. He had fought in many battles against many enemies, but there was something special about his hatred for beings who threatened innocence. All units, weapons free, he whispered into his radio. Show them why Earth's children do not make good prey. The attack began with silence. The first Vorthan soldier simply disappeared from the rear of the formation, pulled into the crystal underbrush without making a sound. The second one turned to look for his missing comrade and found a human knife between his armor plates. By the time General Krex realized they were under attack, half his force was already down. "Contact front," he shouted, swinging his massive weapon toward the crystal trees. "Enemy forces in the forest." But there was nothing to shoot at. The humans moved like shadows, appearing just long enough to strike before vanishing back into cover. They used the crystal formations themselves as weapons, causing resonances that disrupted Vorthan communications and disoriented their heavy troops. Private Williams and his squad demonstrated the pack-hunting behavior that had made humans the apex predators of Earth. They worked together without needing to speak, communicating through hand signals and shared instincts. One would draw the enemy's attention while others struck from unexpected angles. "Where are they?" A Vorthan soldier screamed, spinning in circles as his comrades fell around him. "How many are there?" The answer was 12 human soldiers against 40 Vorthan troops. But in the Crystal Forest, numbers meant less than understanding the terrain, moving silently and thinking like a predator instead of like a conqueror. Sergeant Blake appeared behind a cluster of purple crystals, his rifle spitting precise bursts of fire that found the weak points in Vorthan armor. When they turned to face him, he was already gone and Corporal Stone was attacking from their other side. "They are everywhere," the Vorthans reported in panic. "We cannot get a clear shot." But the humans could. They had spent their entire evolution learning to hunt creatures larger and stronger than themselves. They used patience, coordination, and the environment itself to even the odds. General Krex found himself alone, his soldiers either dead or scattered in panic through the crystal forest. His armor was damaged, his weapon nearly out of power, and he could hear the soft footsteps of pursuers getting closer. Then he saw his chance. Through the crystal trees, he spotted a group of Kari civilians who had emerged from their shelter to help the wounded. The plant-like beings were tending to injured humans with their healing abilities, their flower-like faces showing nothing but compassion and concern. "Perfect," Krex muttered, raising his weapon. "If I cannot have them as slaves, I will use them as hostages." He stepped into the clearing, his massive form towering over the gentle Kari. "Human soldiers," he shouted. "Show yourselves or these civilians die." The Kari looked up at him with confusion rather than fear. They had never seen hatred before, never experienced the threat of deliberate violence. Ambassador Nera was among them, her forearms cradling a wounded human soldier with maternal care. "Please," she said softly to the Vorthan general. "This human is badly hurt. Let me help him." Krex stared at her in disbelief. "You would help your own protectors? These predators who fight and kill?" "They are fighting to protect us," Nera replied simply. "How could we not help them in return?" The general raised his weapon, preparing to fire at the defenseless civilians. But as his finger touched the trigger, he felt something cold press against the back of his neck. "I would not," said Major Cross's voice, deadly quiet. The human had appeared from nowhere, moving through the crystal forest like a ghost. His weapon was aimed at the exact spot where Krex's armor was weakest. "You are outnumbered," Krex snarled. "One human against a Vorthan warrior." "One human defending innocence," Cross corrected. "That is all it takes." Around the clearing, other human soldiers emerged from their hiding places. They had been there all along, watching, waiting for the general to reveal himself. Now they stood in a perfect circle, their weapons trained on him. "You want to know what a death world teaches you?" Cross asked conversationally. "It teaches you that the most dangerous creature is not always the biggest or the strongest. Sometimes it is the one that is protecting something it cares about." General Krex looked around at the humans surrounding him. Each one was smaller than him, weaker than him, but there was something in their eyes that made his blood run cold. These were not just soldiers. They were pack hunters who had found someone threatening their protected ones. "Surrender," Cross said simply. "Your fleet is scattered. Your troops are defeated and you are surrounded. It is over." Krex dropped his weapon. As the humans secured him, he found himself looking at the Kari civilians who were still tending to wounded soldiers. With gentle care, the sight confused him more than anything else in the battle. "Why do they help you?" he asked Cross. "You are predators. They should fear you." Major Cross glanced over at Ambassador Nera, who was using her natural healing abilities to close a soldier's wounds. The Kari looked up and gave him a smile that was pure gratitude and trust. "Because they understand something that bullies like you never will," Cross replied. "The difference between a predator and a protector is not what they are capable of doing. It is what they choose to do with that capability." As the last Vorthan prisoners were secured and the wounded were cared for, the crystal forest began to return to its natural peace. But something had changed on Loomis Prime that day. The gentle, Kari had learned that not all predators were evil, and the humans had found a species worth protecting. The galaxy would never be the same. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Representatives from 300 species sat in their floating chairs, watching the holographic display that showed the aftermath of the Battle of Loomis Prime. Ships burning in space. Vorthan prisoners being treated with unexpected mercy by their human captors. And most shocking of all, footage of the gentle Kari tending to wounded human soldiers with the same care they would show their own children. Chancellor Koth of the Riel Consortium cleared his throat, breaking the silence. His reptilian features showed the confusion that most of the galaxy felt. "Ambassador Nera of the Kari, please explain to the Council what exactly happened in your system." Ambassador Nera rose gracefully from her crystal chair, her forearms folded in the traditional gesture of respect. Around her, the other representatives studied her with new interest. The Kari had never participated in council meetings before. They were too peaceful, too gentle for the rough politics of galactic governance. "Honored council members," she began, her musical voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. 7 days ago, our world faced destruction by the Vorthan Empire. We sent out a distress call expecting little response. What we received changed everything we thought we knew about the galaxy. The holographic display shifted to show the human fleet arriving at Loomis Prime. The ships looked primitive compared to most galactic technology, angular, brutal things that seemed designed more for survival than exploration. "The humans came from what our star charts call the Deathworlds," Nera continued. "Planets so hostile that we believed no intelligent life could exist there. We were wrong." A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. The idea of intelligent, life evolving on death worlds challenged everything galactic science had taught for thousands of years. Chancellor Koth leaned forward in his chair. "And these humans, they defeated the entire Vorthan fleet?" 300 ships were not destroyed, Nera corrected gently. They were defeated. The humans could have eliminated every Vorthan vessel, but they chose mercy. They allowed the survivors to retreat after their commander surrendered. This caused an even greater stir among the council. In galactic warfare, complete destruction of the enemy was the norm. The concept of mercy toward defeated foes was almost unknown. Dr. Kim stepped forward from the human delegation. She was small compared to most of the galactic representatives, but her presence commanded attention. "Honored Council, I am Dr. Kim of the Terran Scientific Collective. I have prepared a report on human evolution that may explain our capabilities." The display changed to show Earth, a blue and green world that looked deceptively peaceful from space. But as the image zoomed closer, the reality became clear. Massive storms swept across the continents. Volcanoes erupted, spewing ash into the atmosphere. Ice sheets advanced and retreated with each climate cycle. "Earth is what we classify as a Class 12 death world," Dr. Kim explained. "Extreme weather, dangerous wildlife, constant geological activity. Most species would consider it uninhabitable." "How did your people survive?" asked Representative Zephyr of the Cloud Dancers, her gaseous form shimmering with curiosity. "We became cooperative predators," Dr. Kim replied. "We hunt in packs, use tools as weapons, and adapt to any environment. But most importantly, we learned that survival depends on protecting the group. A human alone dies quickly on Earth. Humans working together can survive anything. The display showed images of human cities, farms, and families. Despite their predatory appearance, the beings in the images clearly cared for each other. Children played safely while adults worked together on complex tasks. They protect their young, observed elder moss of the ancient forest collective, like many species. But these images suggest something more. Humans protect everyone they consider part of their pack, Nera said softly. When they came to our world, they adopted us. They fought for us as if we were their own children. Captain Reed, representing the Terran Defense Force, stood to address the council. His uniform was simple compared to the elaborate costumes of other delegates, but his presence filled the room. Honored representatives, he said in his rough human voice. My people have a saying. The strong must protect the weak, or strength has no meaning. We came to Loomis Prime because someone called for help. That is what humans do. But what do you gain from this? Demanded Administrator Quill of the Trade Federation. What resources do you want? What territory do you claim? Reed looked genuinely confused by the question. Gain? We gain the knowledge that peaceful beings like the Kari can continue to exist. We gain allies who can teach us about art, philosophy, and beauty. What more do we need? The council members exchanged glances. This was unprecedented. Every species in galactic history had expanded for resources, territory, or power. The humans seemed to be expanding for the purpose of protecting others. What about the Vorthan prisoners? Asked Marshal Drex of the Warworlds. Traditionally, defeated enemies are enslaved or executed. They are being held in comfortable facilities on Loomis Prime, Reed replied. We are working with their government to arrange prisoner exchanges and peace negotiations. Peace negotiations? Drex laughed harshly. The Vorthans understand only strength. Then we will show them strength, Reed said quietly. But we will also show them that strength can be used to build instead of destroy. The holographic display shifted to show the current situation throughout the galaxy. The defeat of the Vorthans had sent shockwaves through every aggressive empire. Species that had been planning invasions were suddenly reconsidering their strategies. 3 major expansion fleets have turned back from their targets, reported Intelligence Chief Vale. The Crimson Horde has requested a peace summit. Even the Iron Legion is asking for diplomatic contact with the humans. Chancellor Koth studied the tactical displays with growing amazement. A single battle has changed the balance of power in the entire galaxy. Not the battle, Nera corrected. The aftermath. The galaxy has learned that there is a species that will answer distress calls, that will fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves, that will show mercy to defeated enemies. Dr. Kim activated another display showing communication logs. We have received 43 distress calls in the past week. Peaceful species that have been threatened for years are finally asking for help. And you will answer them all? Asked Chancellor Koth. Captain Reed nodded firmly. Everyone we can reach in time. But why? Representative Zephyr asked again. Your world is far from these conflicts. You could ignore them and live in peace. Reed was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. Finally, he spoke words that would be recorded in galactic history. Because peace is not something you have. Peace is something you make. And if good beings do not stand up to bullies, then the bullies win. The council session continued for hours, but the real decisions were being made in smaller meetings throughout the galactic capital. Species that had never spoken to each other before were forming alliances. Peaceful worlds were coordinating their calls for help. Aggressive empires were discovering that conquest was no longer profitable when humans might show up to oppose them. 3 months later, Ambassador Nera stood once again at the great window of the council chamber on Loomis Prime. But this time, she was not alone. Captain Reed stood beside her, pointing out the human ships that now patrolled the system alongside Kari vessels. The crystal gardens are more beautiful than ever, Reed observed. Your people have a gift for creating beauty, Nera replied. And your people have a gift for protecting it. Together we are stronger than either species could be alone. They could see human children playing with young Kari in the crystal groves. The human children were learning to appreciate beauty and harmony, while the Kari young were learning that strength could be gentle and protective. Captain, Nera said thoughtfully, what will happen when the galaxy is at peace? When there are no more distress calls to answer? Reed smiled, an expression that no longer seemed frightening to the Kari. Then we will find other ways to help. Maybe we will explore new sectors, looking for species that need friends instead of enemies. Maybe we will learn to create beauty like your people do. And if new threats arise, if other aggressive species emerge, then the galaxy will know what to do. What would that be? Nara asked. Reed replied confidently. They will send out a distress call, and somewhere, someone will answer. This is the Terran Defense Force. We are on our way. As the three suns set over Loomis Prime, their light reflected off the crystal spires and the metal hulls of human ships. Two species as different as predator and prey had found a way to work together, and in doing so they had changed the entire galaxy. The age of conquest was ending. The age of protection had begun, and at the heart of it all was a simple truth that humans had learned on their death world. The strong must protect the weak, or strength has no meaning at all.